is 1917 to 2013. So you see here, as union membership rate declines, so does the share of the overall income going to the middle 60%. And that isn't just people in unions. We're talking about all workers, because of the power that unions have over industries to essentially raise the standards for what is acceptable in the workplace. So that is still, the biggest issue here when it comes to the voice of workers. But getting rid of non-competes would definitely move the needle. So before I get to the clip here a little more, other studies show that non-competes protect established companies from startups, reducing competition within industries. The arrangements may also harm productivity by making it hard for companies to hire workers who best fit their needs. The FTC proposal is the latest in a series of aggressive and sometimes unorthodox moves to rein in the power of large companies under the agency's chair, Lena Khan. So I'm going to get to commenting on a couple other, or at least one other angle, or one other lawsuit that the FTC is engaged in, and my thoughts on that, because I actually disagree with one of the things the FTC is doing, even though largely they have done a fantastic job here under Joe Biden. But let me show you first here some comments from Lena Khan on, of course, as I said, CNBC, the business network, but this is the place to go to make the argument. So she's here making that argument. Here's a bit of this clip.
So non-compete clauses today govern around 1 in 5 U.S. workers. These clauses may have started in the boardroom, but today what we see is that they've proliferated across sectors and across income levels. So we're talking about nurses, we're talking about fast food workers, janitors, but also physicians and engineers. And we've now seen that in the aggregate, these clauses can really restrict competition, both in labor markets, but also in product markets. And so our economists calculated that collectively American workers are earning around $300 billion less because of these non-competes, and that on the whole, innovation and entrepreneurship are suffering.
Now, there's some.
So I'm going to get to a little more here. So that's the overall view around, $300 billion in wages lost per year because of these non-competes alone. But here is where Lena Khan fields a lot of these questions from the pro-business angle. So, of course, 4 minutes of this, but it's worth watching.
What do you say to some?
How she responds to all of it, because she has a great response to all of it and does a good job here at shutting down all of these pro-business positions.
Somebody the critique of this would just say, okay, there's a free market, and the employer effectively is paying for the privilege. They are paying you effectively for the non-compete. So meaning people can agree to contracts, and one of the contractual terms may very well be, I'm going to pay you a little bit extra, or whatever you think is appropriate, so that you don't go off and work for my competitor tomorrow.
Yeah, in theory, I think we've seen that people suggest there is that premium. I think we don't always see that in practice. Sometimes employers are actually imposing these on workers even after they've agreed to a job.
On that point, I'll get back to this just to share this. One study found that only 10% of workers sought to bargain for concessions in return for signing a non-compete. About 1/3 became aware of the non-compete only after accepting a job offer. The idea that these employers are really proactively raising wages because they have included non-competes is ridiculous. Only after you have maybe asked for higher pay because you see a non-compete, only then maybe they will decide to raise that pay if they have no one else for that position that they can put in that spot that would work just as well as you would. So yeah, there is no situation where an employer is going to raise your pay just because they've included that. Why would they unless they are forced to? This is how all employers operate. They're going to try to hire you for as little as they possibly can. That way, they make a larger profit.
I think what we've also seen is that on net, this can be bad for competition in ways that we should be concerned about regardless. At the FTC, sometimes we hear from founders who were able to secure capital. They were looking to enter a market. They were able to build the factory. But at the end of the day, they weren't able to build and scale because all the relevant workers, the talent, was locked up. And I think when you look at states like California, that for decades have rendered non-competes non-enforceable, I think you can see that there can be a huge boon to innovation and competition.
What about the idea of trade secrets? So part of this, and a lot of this comes from tech, where people have a view that there are folks who are engineers or others or in healthcare who have trade secrets. They know stuff. And so you don't want them to be able to go across the street and take either the trade secrets themselves or even sort of adjacent knowledge, if you will, in the immediate term, at least, right? It's not necessarily just the trade secret unto itself. It's, you know what, even if they don't tell the other employer exactly what the other guys, they know too much, and that has value, at least in the first 6 months to a year out from that job. So we want to hold you away from having that happen for some period of time or what have you.
Look, it's a reasonable concern. And at this stage, what we've seen is that there are alternative tools to non-competes that you can use to protect legitimate trade secrets, legitimate IP. So you can use non-disclosure agreements that can be tailored. We also have trade secrets law, right? Employers bring hundreds of lawsuits a year to enforce trade secrets.
The conundrum there is that's after the fact. It's typically, when I say after the fact, it's typically after somebody has arguably taken a trade secret and used it. And so the employer has.
I just got to look at how proactive this network is when it comes to defending the profits of massive corporations. This is like, you will never see them try and make this argument on the other side, where people are getting screwed. Their wages are lower for a variety of reasons, one of them being non-competes. But when it comes to like, oh, because the employer, the company has to sue them after the fact, go after them after they discover this issue, they should be allowed to prevent them from even having another job at all. That's the solution. It's just like, I understand his position here is to push back and ask these questions. That's his job. But this is their only perspective. They never have the other perspective of the worker.
Has been quote unquote injured, right?
Which, by the way, last point on this, I've said this before. CNBC is a business network. There is no equal of that on the employer side. There is no union network from NBC. So there's NBC, which is already pro-corporate. Then there's CNBC, which is tailor-made for large corporations. There is no labor NBC. Just to give you, again, the which is, yes, obvious because we're talking about capitalism. This is how they operate. But it just to show you how they are not unbiased here. They have a perspective that they showcase, yet they are unwilling to really own that their perspective is always going to be pro-business. They pretend they are neutral when in fact they're only giving you one perspective on these issues. All right, let's finish this off.
They're having to show injury. One of the reasons they have non-competes or these type of arrangements is to prevent even getting into a position where they have to show injury first, right?
That's right. Though we've also seen instances in which people break non-competes, they go anyway, and employers are having to enforce after the fact anyway. But at this stage, our thesis is that there are these alternative mechanisms that would still protect legitimate trade secrets, protect IP, but not have such a drag on the economy in the way that we see non-competes do.
What do you say to those who say, look, the FTC actually doesn't even have the authority to put this rule into place? This Section 5, and we can get into details of what that is, doesn't really allow for this. And this, if ever got to the Supreme Court, especially given the politics of how you think about the Supreme Court today, that this is dead in the water before it starts?
Look, Congress gave the FTC the authority to check unfair methods of competition. They told us that we could do that through a variety of ways, through bringing lawsuits, but also through bringing rules, through issuing market-wide rules. And so we're confident that the text and structure of the FTC Act gives us clear authority to do this.
So it's very likely that there will be lawsuits over this, because anytime you're going to potentially decrease the profits at all of a business, of an industry, because of pro-worker measures, there's going to be a challenge, because all the money, all the ability to challenge these kinds of things are on the side of the employers. So they likely will try and challenge it, and they may be successful. But it is definitely, it appears to be, within their authority here to do these kinds of pro-competition measures, which, again, yes, this also helps competition along with helping employees.